Okay, so the video I did yesterday wasn't exactly the greatest views. I think I had this camera turned a little bit too high up, so do another repeat here. We have some glass here, antique glass that I'd found here at a farm dump. We're going to see if we can make an arrowhead out of it. So I'm going to start with the medium billet here. We're going to go ahead and get those edges knocked off. I like working with this antique stuff because you wind up with a lot of colors that you're not going to find in the newer stuff. I'm just going to go around. Like I said, take that lip off where the curvature of the bottle came up. This is easily available tools if you're looking to get into this. Ooh, there's a couple places. Neolithics is a common one. But if you just type in Knapping kit, you can find any of these. And glass is probably your cheapest and most readily available starter material, just on account of anybody that knows the local drunk or is a local drunk can easily get a hold of some. Even if recycling day comes around and you're one of them folks that lives in town, just I don't think many of your neighbors are going to cry if you say, hey, yeah, can I take a couple bottles? Chances are pretty good they're going to be intrigued if you actually tell them why and say, yeah, take all you want. So, okay, we got most of that lip knocked off. It's important because I want to get down to this lens shape. Okay, you can see there's still a little bit there. We'll get that. My next step is going to be to start bringing the edges in to the point that, you know, we can make something that looks like a projectile point or an arrowhead or whatever the finished product is. I want to make sure I get all those lips knocked off so that we're working with something new here. If you find yourself looking for blue glass and don't have any laying around, it's a disgusting beer, but Bud Light Platinum has blue bottoms. All you have to do is stick a nail in a beer bottle, hold your thumb over the top. Recommend wearing gloves again throughout this whole process and having a better piece of leather than this, but that's what I have sitting around. So, but you stick your thumb over the top of the beer bottle once you throw the nail in, and shake it up and down like this, and that bottom will pop out. Just make sure you're not standing over concrete, because then it will blow up. But it's pretty easy to get a lot of material to mess around with this. Okay, so this bottom might give us a little fight, but I highly doubt it. We're going to go ahead. It's a nice thick one, but you can still see the curvature. So let's start bringing this thing in. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Just kind of figure a corner, and you see I'm doing this over top of a trash can. It's probably the easiest way to make sure most everything's cleaned up. I still recommend sweeping after the fact, but and you can see it also stops that from happening if you're over concrete. You can see we're starting to bring in the edges, nice and easy. Not trying to get greedy with it. I tell you, smack back in here, this whole thing pops. I'm keeping this supported on my leg at the same time so that it's just taking the impact on the edge. If I hold it up like this and I start smacking on it, that does something different. It's not, at this point, advisable. The other rule of thumb is you can always shoot for bigger, but if something bad happens, man, that's some pretty glass. It's not that big a deal to keep shrinking it down till you don't have material left. There's a nice thick piece of glass. It's going to make a nice point. You can see I'm just taking nips out. You don't have to sit and wail on it like I'm doing, but now one of the next things you'll notice is that edge is entirely down to one side. We want to get rid of that, and I think just to make things easier, man, it is a nice thick core. We're going to take that front port off where that lip's at and sort of shrink back into the piece. I think I can get that out. But the idea is that this is a nice thick piece. I can definitely work it over from that. So next up, I'm going to do my braiding. Strengthens the edge and makes it really easy to see the platforms. Now, brings up another safety concern. Wear glasses. I don't. I'm stupid. I had glass in my eyes many a time. But, so, we're going to swap over to my smaller bopper, which of course, all of a sudden I can't find. It didn't wind up in the can from yesterday. Gonna have to take a pause while I find that thing, because it's not in my bag where it should be. And of course it was sitting right behind me, so get right back where we were. So now what I'm going to do after I braided the edge here, you can see how there's a couple flakes off of that side, hopefully, and really makes that. This is not my usual braider. This one's really not great, but what that does is when I go down through here like so, lets me throw good flakes. And we're going to start getting that scoring pattern, but also this is thinning the piece. You can see that we're one flake, two flake. I'm going to aim for the next one here. Sometimes you might have to braid in between, but that lets you throw the nice flakes. That combined with the angle and the force. There's a good one. Those are also the ones that stick in your leg. So you can see that one went 3/4 of the way across, which is good because everybody wants a piece that's finished. There's another good one. Goes right in there. You will bleed if you do this. It is a necessity. Some people really bleed. It all depends. That's why I recommend gloves. Okay. Especially, this probably wouldn't be a good hobby to get into if you're somebody that hemophiliac or something of that nature that has issues with clotting. But okay, now I'm going to go down through the other side, do the same thing as I thin this. We didn't travel quite as far as I wanted to, so hopefully there's a lot of strategy involved in this. It really took a nice chunk out of there. It's good. You can see as we're working our way across. I think, like I said, it's nice. This is a really thick piece. This one might bite me. Nope, got lucky. just trying to thin the entirety of the piece down, and at the same time bring the edge up closer to the center line, which I'm talking this way across the piece. That doesn't seem like a good platform. When you're braiding, is a lot of times flakes will fly up and bite you in the eyes. Not really advisable. Okay. Took the point off, it's alright. A lot of thinning to do here yet. And now we're getting there. Of course, I have to maybe make a new point here. And it'll continue to get shaped as we go through, but it'll probably be alright for now. It's always nice to take something that otherwise wouldn't be used at all and give it some new life other than just rotting out there now. Now I can start doing the backside some of these platforms. Back's really going to want to go and travel, because the steeper the angle this way, the less the flake's going to go. The lighter the angle, and if you're hitting it at the proper angle, like so, it just wants to fly. So I think I can do this one this way. Don't try and get greedy when it comes to this. If you start really lusting after the long flakes, ruin can come, because you can overshoot and basically explode the thing in your hands, which is not that much fun. There we go. That's looking pretty good. So continue around the back and start thinning that part of it down. Okay. It's always nice to work with these blue glass steels because it makes a really nice finished piece. Now, here's another thing. You see that everything's on this side of the center line? That means I want to hit on this side of the piece, like so. If it was higher, you're not going to get a long flake. It's just going to nip off the edge if you hit down here. It needs to be, it's another reason we're cheating up the center line, is so that I can get flakes off that other side. But the braiding will help you immensely, because it makes everything just bite in there nice. Now I really starting to like that flake scoring as it goes across 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see. When you're first starting out, I would just recommend just trying to get something that looks halfway like an arrowhead, which it's going to be a lot of cut fingers and a lot of broken material. That's why starting with glass is such a good idea. It's cheap. You don't need to be blowing a bunch of money on boxes of expensive flint, because chances are good you're going to wind up with a bunch of unusable stuff, and it's going to turn you off to the habit pretty quick when you're throwing out a bunch of money and not really getting anywhere. Okay. Well, I still need to, might just have to dive in here. Okay, we're starting to work that center line down. I want to go around the back here like I was saying. Got to thin that back down. Now another method you can use to get what they call a, see, right now is a good point, bifurcated edge, is to flip the piece. I need my book. That's fighting me a little bit. Bifurcated edge is like a zigzag, like a sawtooth, and it lets you, come on, there we go. It lets you work both sides at the same time if that's so you desire. But with a bottle, go back to my smaller billet. With a bottle, you're already, well, in most flakes, you're never going to get a perfect flake coming out of the gate. It's just not going to happen. So you're always going to be trying to work a curve out. That's another, brings up another point. If you're going to be buying material, done a bunch of glass, and you think maybe, hey, I want to start moving over to stone points, start with obsidian because it's very glass-like. Some of these other ones, most reputable stone dealers you're going to go through already have stuff heat treated, because believe it or not, maybe you've never been informed either, there's quite a few materials that the natives used to heat treat, put underneath a fire, heat them up, and let them cool down, because they're not ready to go as you find them in the earth. Obsidian's readily available just about anywhere. Like I said, very similar to glass, very, very similar. It's just a good starting point all around, but obsidian's sharper than steel. So if you mess with obsidian, you're going to get bit. So I really, at that point, recommend wearing the gloves. Again, do as I say, not as I do. So, starting to get something that looks pretty good here. Getting pretty Arrowhead-like. I'm going to go ahead and give it good abrasion. I'm going to flake. And we're going to shift over to pressure flaking. Of course, I can't. Oh, there it is. Okay. I'm going to start with a larger pressure flaker. This lets me have even more control, and we're going to have this cut out so it doesn't slow down the flakes. I'm going to go like that. Get some of these platforms off. You can buy different materials than just flakes. So if you just want to play around with pressure flaking for a little while before you go over to direct percussion, which is what I was just doing, and that's totally doable. They do sell abrading blocks. Most places that are much better than that, that's just a piece of sandstone I have around, drives me nuts. But for some reason, I think maybe my boy or somebody in the house walked off with all of them. Now when I'm doing this, I'm pushing in and down, sort of like you can hear it. It almost sounds like a flicking. You're just sort of focusing on getting things thinned out here and there, getting closer to our finished piece. I don't really like that platform. Gives you a lot more blunt edge to push with, and you're going to get longer flakes. At least that's the idea. Okay, this edge is all kinds of wonked out over here. Other side. I'm going to go down the size on pressure flaker. I have a file here and I keep these things fairly sharp. They do dull up, as you go, but no big deal. A couple swipes on a file and you'll get where you want to go. Very nice. Work around the back here a little bit. Could use a little more abrasion. The abrasion just takes off any little flakes you have there, so you're almost certain to be hitting a good one that's going to go a distance. Of course, that one didn't. It's just a little more certain. You're more certain. Okay. Now, of course, the bigger pressure flaker is generally going to throw better flakes. Not always. But pretty much everything about this is a progression. Whoop. That was a nice flake. Oh, not a good platform. Thin this thing down a bit off of the back. How's it going? This methods here are pretty close. The copper's the best substitute in the modern world for antler. At least as far as this goes, because it's a softer metal. And it actually bites in when I push. And then I snap down and you get that good pop. You can see, took that flake out right there. So I'm push in, and then flick. Not all going to be winners. It all depends on the material. There's a lot of factors that come into play. I'm also not claiming to be the world's expert, but I do have a decent handle on this anyway. As I said in yesterday's video, I'm more than a bit rusty, but like riding a bike, it'll come back. Now, here comes the point where we start doing design issues. Symmetry is beauty to the human eye, and it's no different. Imagine you're going to use that for hunting purposes. You want that thing to be consistent, and actually, as you make a bunch of points, you would want all of them to be pretty close in weight, because you want to be able to, you can see I'm just going to retip my little one. I'm spinning this as I'm doing it, so I get a nice little point. You want your arrows to be consistent. Most archers can tell you that. I should say any of them that are decent. But consistency lets you have an idea where your arrows are going to hit. Anybody that's taking a handful of arrows out and realizes right away there's one or two of them that don't shoot the same as the rest, it's probably not you, that's the arrow. I'm just kind of trying to clean this edge up, balance it out to itself, and at the same time we're thinning the piece. Thinning it down, making sure we're working everywhere. As you go, generally, I'm not pushing as hard at this point because the piece is closer as it was when the thing was close to whole, because that's just a recipe for disaster. I'm making sure I'm supporting it as much as can be, because points like to break off towards the tip. And then, again, not the end of the world. Is going to happen if you've never done this before, even if you have. But the reality of it is, the beauty of it, I should say, just keep going until you have a smaller point, or you have nothing left in your hand. So that's looking pretty good to my way of thinking. I'm going to go ahead and try and thin this back, and this one corner down just a smidge more for the notching portion. Now see, got a bleed on the field. Got to be in it to win it. In all seriousness, though, please wear gloves and glasses. Don't be stupid like Pete. Please, please. Another safety note, supposedly doing this a lot, you run the risk of getting silicosis, which is basically the dust gets in your lungs and causes your respiratory issues down the road. But I have my door open, and this is well ventilated in here. And I'm also not making 500 a day, so that does help out. Exposure, fresh air. If you can do this outside, it's absolutely the perfect activity. But also, I've noticed the point in the year when you get the urge to do stuff like this tends to be towards the colder months generally, at least in my experience. Now, I'm going to go ahead and retip this. It's getting close. If you think this is something you might like to try, I've never personally done it, but there are, surprisingly enough, napping groups, is what this is called, Knapping, in a lot of areas. And you can meet up with those people and they can cut your learning curve, because watching something on a YouTube video is all well and good. It's interesting sometimes. But going to learn from somebody hands-on, I never did, just for lack of time. But it's one of those things where who knows what. I'm not going to say I might never do that. I can only imagine the wealth of knowledge these guys have that have been doing it a lot longer than I have. So now I'm going to get to the notching portion. I think that's probably good enough for what I'm trying to accomplish here. I'm just going to arbitrarily pick a spot. Now, I personally switched over to a little steel screwdriver because it's very thin and your notches are going to want to work out on you as you go up through. I've tried a bunch of different stuff, and for whatever reason this seems to work the best with me personally. That's what it all comes down to, personal preference. Some guys, their whole kick of it is how far up can I notch the thing. Personally, I'd rather have smaller notches and walk away with the finished point, but that's just me. we're going to go ahead and use the small small pressure flaker here. Sort of hollows that out so that I could more easily tie a stick on there if I so desired. I'm not going to. I've too many of these goddamn things sitting around, but I could. Good to have options in life. Sometimes you'll get little, wouldn't recommend doing that. It's a quick way to bust a point in half, but wouldn't recommend doing that either. I'm just full of bad ideas. Full of bad ideas. So, now, no matter how well you plan your notches, for some reason they always seem to get out of whack as you flip the thing up and over. And this one, of course, decided to bust the edge out a little bit. So, to compensate, I'm going to take this one out a little further. Till I get to a point where I'm halfway happy with it, symmetry-wise. I could put it on a pressure flaker at this point. And that's probably about all she wrote. So, there we go. Arrowhead out of a bottle of glass. Can't really argue with it. Because at the end of the day, it's, got lucky on that one. At the end of the day, it's one of those things where your worst effort is still going to be better than that thing was sitting there rotting away. So, all right. Hope you enjoyed.